Our first series of the day will be Coca versus Jookto. It is the Slayers player against the former OGS player. I don't know what team Jookto's on. He's still teamless, as for all intents and purposes. Yeah. But for now, we're going to start things off on Daybreak, the map of all Zerg choices. They love this map, Andre.
I love this map. I love this map,
Frodan. Because you're playing Zerg right now.
I know, I am playing Zerg. That's why. Every single Terran and Protoss, they don't like this map.
They don't. They really don't.
Yeah, it's nice to see Jookto back into things. I believe I played him on ladder in Korean server when I was a very big gamer back then. I don't know. His name was Jookto at the time. So it might be, it might not be, but I think I played him and he absolutely smashed me back then. I'm sure he's continued his skills into, well, 2012? Wow, yep. 2012. Anyway, let's go ahead and introduce the players. Top right-hand position as the Red Zerg. We have, of course, Coca, the Zerg vs. Zerg Slayer from yesterday.
Yes, who took out his teammate in the ZVZ, so Coca is very favored in this matchup against Jookto. Jookto, the orange Zerg player in the bottom left, currently teamless. Korean player that was formerly on OGS, but before that he was actually on the clan Jung. I don't think people might remember that, but that was a really long time ago. Now, Jookto has actually a lot of history behind his abilities. He's a very unorthodox Zerg, always been one challenging the classic paradigm of Zerg play. In fact, I was telling you this earlier, Andre, he was one of the first players to really utilize Baneling drops. And then Fruit Dealer took that to a new level and won GSL, so.
Poor Jookto.
The greatest people in life,
like,
Andre,
hey, yeah,
Steele.
thanks for that.
The greatest artist in life, Steele. That's what I was told.
That's what I found out. Edison was notorious for that, apparently. He was under a lot of scrunny. Those of you that don't know.
When he stole from Nikolai Tesla? Is that what it was?
It was just so many different things. And I know the history a little bit, but I don't know the super big details. But I know there's a lot of controversy with him and Tesla as well.
That's right. Like, Jookto is a very smart player, very much like Tesla and Edison. Just a huge thinker type of player, but also he's a guy that used to be super aggressive. He used to play mass Zergling kind of style. He was doing, when Baneling drops wasn't working, he was going Zergling drops and things like GSL. And now Jookto is still kind of on the hinge of a lot of things. He's still qualifying for Code A and losing in the first rounds. He lost to Hero, lost to Ace, which are it's nothing to be ashamed of. But at the same time, he hasn't been able to regain that Code S status that he used to have.
You know, when I was playing Jookto, he actually Zergling Baneling all in me. So it wasn't I say he smashed me, but he was a little bit all in. That was at the time when I guess Zergling Baneling was just on the rise. People weren't really going into that. They were still sticking to sort of like a Zergling into mutas off of 2-base. So it's very, very far away. But you can already see Jookto, is the type of player that isn't refined in terms of macroing and microing. You'll never hear like, oh, Jookto has the most amazing macro, the most amazing micro in the world. Probably not. But if you want to talk about, his build, how he actually sees things, the triggers that he does to actually say, I can do this all in it and it'll be successful, that's what we have to look for in this game. How does Jookto actually go about determining how he actually, plays out the rest of this match?
Right, and at the same time, Coca is one of these players that does some kind of builds that are off the cuff as well. He doesn't necessarily abide by any rules and timings, especially in ZVZ. We got a good taste of that yesterday when he played against KDY and punished him based off the scouting and the natural timings he understands of what Zerg is capable of doing. It was actually on this map as well. KDY was at 50 drones and Coca's on 35 and just overwhelmed him with a huge timing that Zerg was not able to hold. So Coca is one of these players that if you give him an opportunity, he will go for it with all of his strength.
Yes,
so I think both players have to be careful about that.
Don't give him an inch, man, because you give him an inch, he'll take a mile. That's just the type of player he is. He's really able to exploit a lot of different openings, and we saw that, as you said, oh my god, I want to say last week, but it was just yesterday. My goodness. Anyway, Coca is looking like he's just opening up very standard. He's playing a little bit more greedy, as we were talking about. Absolutely no sort of Sim City in this at the natural, which is sort of the metagame these days. You rely on that Sim City to help you out dealing with Zergling Baneling all-ins. It looks like he's not even going to put that. You can see even a delayed spine crawler. It just shows you how greedy he is. Not only that, it forces his opponent Jookto to actually scout it into the main, because of course, as you can see, his Baneling nest is right in front. That it's very apparent, obviously.
Yeah, and you can see that, the two banelings trying to go and immediately detonate, but Coca actually whiffs and doesn't hit the two banelings, so trades two banelings for a creep tumor. But the silver lining is Coca does manage to get into the main base and scatter his opponent. Sees one gas for a very long time, so he knows that his opponent has been thinking about droning. And to be fair, Jookto has been kind of reeling it in. He hasn't actually been playing terribly greedy, but now, Andre, the drones are rolling in.
Yeah. You know, that's really important that you mentioned that, the gas. And I know everybody makes fun of me now for my gas timings, but it is so important to actually get in there in the early game stages and see, hey, my opponent doesn't have an extra gas. If a second gas is up, that kind of facilitates some sort of all-in or some sort of aggression in that early game stage. Coca was able to get in there with just, you know, a pair of Zerglings or maybe two pairs of Zerglings, and he sees, okay, one gas, a lot of drones. That's the only thing that you're capable of. Maybe Zerglings as well, but Zerglings are a little bit silly. You know, of course, with the power of Banelings. Defensively, it's very easy to stop your opponent, especially with Queens and Spinecrawlers.
Coca immediately starts a +1 on, +1 missile attack on his Evo chamber, so indicating he's going to heavily tech switch into roaches. And so is Jookto. So both players going to already prepare their tech switch, but Jookto immediately throws down an infestation pit as well. Now he hasn't been mining, again, just like we said, a lot of gas, so I don't think he can crank out that many infestors. Yeah. So he naturally is going to be at a disadvantage because he already placed just that build, and you can see Coca already a little bit more gas ahead, even though he's already made a huge round of roaches. Yeah,
that does constitute actually a ton of gas. And just getting the infestation pit and then the upgrade alone, you can say the gas worth of that, 300, that's right there, 12 roaches. That's quite substantial. So you are giving up a lot by going that infestation pit, but we'll see if Jookto actually tries to hit that. For now, a couple Zerglings are being taken care of in this bottom right-hand base, but both these players are just going ahead and preparing for that mid-game. Actually, Jookto is moving out. This is kind of insane. A lot of times when you make these roaches to begin with, they're defensive, but then you're saying, okay, I need to make sure my opponent is also doing the same thing. So you will push out like this. This is just feinting aggression. You're not actually looking to do all-out, you know, attacks. But at the very least, it's going to commit a lot of larvae into units that really don't want to be non-drones.
Oh, Andre, you know what? I mixed up the colors as well. It was Coca that went for infestors. For some reason, I thought I just mixed it up, and that's kind of how it is when you're casting. You kind of mix up the colors as well. But yeah, now that Coca is waiting for Pathogen Glance to finish, but he may not have an opportunity to. And Jookto is going to try to get a good concave and try to completely hit this army from the front, but he doesn't have any ability to really break it, and no roaches running by at the third either. Coca gets a lot of free shots, and just like that, he's able to push it out and immediately stay safe. And I guess Jookto trades roaches for nothing there and loses a lot.
I guess Jookto was trying to do this +1 attack timing. That doesn't really exist on Daybreak. You know, these earlier maps like the Shattered Temple, Metalopolis, yes, you are able to do that. You're able to hit that +1 roach timing, especially when the matchup was kind of in its infancy, but nowadays you just cannot. You don't have the capabilities to do that. These players aren't defending against these Baneling Zergling all-ins with just Zergling Banelings because the Queens are so powerful. It gives you that economic boost in the beginning, and it actually severely weakens roaches because you can tech to roaches a lot faster, a lot easier without worrying about this, you know, 30 second to a minute timing where, yeah, potentially you could die.
Well, look at this. Coca managed to sneak in a huge wave of drones, 60 to 45, and now has almost full saturation on his third to be able to give him a good economic advantage if he's able to hold on to it. Jookto, of course, runs by with a few roaches, try to see what his opponent's up to. But now Coca's got enough roaches to really stay safe, and he's going to be able to get out a good number of infestors as well. And of course, everything like the Pathogen Gland upgrades has been delayed for Jookto. His 5th and 6th gases are pretty late as well. So Coca sits with a very nice advantage, and all of a sudden, because Jookto was not able to punish his opponent, Coca has a nice, comfortable lead.
Yes, and Coca should continue this with his infestor count. That's exactly where he should take it, and even take a 4th base. That'll be awesome. Knowing that you are so far ahead in economy, you know the 3rd base gas time. As you can see, the gas is just coming up for Jookto. You're saying, there's no way my opponent can actually outmass me. It's impossible. I'm mining more. I have a considerable amount of hatcheries, actually equivalent hatcheries. He doesn't know that yet, but he can kind of guess that. I should just go out into the middle of the map and take a 4th base. I really don't love any attacks at this point because I think there is very good ways to actually defend if you are Zerg. Zerg for Zerg, just infestors are so efficient at bottling up units. You can see right here is a great place. You bottle up, fungal everything down, and then your roaches have the much better concave. We'll see how he goes about this right now.
Now, Coca does have 2 changelings trying to scout where his opponent's position is. Very, very key in any hero matchup. Positioning just can completely punish you one way or the other. So getting good tabs on your opponent is very good, especially because now both players are able to kind of clear the overlords from any sort of being able to scout their opponent's position. Now, one thing that I want to ask you, Andre, is that Coca is now starting to get Hydralisk Den. When is it, do you feel, like a good time to get Hydras? It always seems like very relative based off what Zergs are feeling. But do you like this timing from the Hydras Den from Coca?
Yeah, I think Hydras are actually very powerful at this stage. The main thing that he's trying to do with these Hydras is actually build up his army and take advantage of his gas advantage that he's had for so long. And because Jookto has had to, really, I guess, hard counter everything that's happening, what Coca's going to be able to do now is incorporate Hydras and get this quality supply, whereas Jookto, he was just trying to mass defend against that incoming wave of roaches and infestors. And that's why I like Coca's patience. He just said, I'm not going to actually attack, I'm just going to wait. He has to actually max out in this position with roaches, and I'm just going to tech change. I'm going to go to Hydras. Hydras are very cost efficient. Not cost efficient, they're very, very high DPS. And from here, I will have the superior army. And you're max 200 this whole time, Jookto, or you should be. And that's where he actually takes his advantage here. You can see Jookto, though, he wasn't max this whole time. I think Coca could have potentially taken this timing. However, he's just going to chill out for now and take his 4th base. I really feel like he missed a pretty important timing here.
Well, regardless, he does have his 4th and probably will have his 5th base established a lot quicker. So even if he doesn't necessarily have an ability to push in, his remax ability will be a lot stronger. But Daybreak is also another map where it doesn't necessarily mean that just because you have a huge army advantage, because there's too many counterattack paths. We saw Zenio versus Sen, just non-stop action back and forth in each other's bases. If you attacked one direction, he's going to send roaches to another base. You can see both players are trying to clear vision as well. We're talking about how important it is to be able to keep tabs on your opponent's position of your army. But now it's starting to enter that phase where when can I feel comfortable enough to attack? How do I incorporate hive timing other than upgrades? Do I even incorporate hive timing? So it's going to get very tricky to see how both players kind of react in late game, because we don't usually see this, to be frank.
Yeah.
Coca and Jookto are very aggressive players both ways, and I want to see how their late game pans out.
I do too. We're going to see right now potential engagement, but I think Jookto has the much better concave. Infestors out in front, of course, just to spot any of those potential fungals. Roaches coming into the 3rd base is going to be very helpful. And look at that, actually splitting up, going to the natural as well. This is so awesome. And obviously this is going to give a huge timing, but look at that. Nice fungal growths are going to go down here, but is there enough? Who's infested Terrans or who's?
Ain't no party like a beach ball party, because the beach ball party don't stop. And you can see a lot of infested Terrans are, there's just so many red infested Terrans. And Coca kept almost all of his infestors. That's really key to be able to snipe this base. And Jookto loses position. He loses gases number 7, because there's only one geyser on the exterior base. And he lost some drones. This is a great trade for Coca, and the best part is he's able to get out and keep his infestor.
Of course, Coca absolutely hugely far ahead.
Wow.
I mean, like, he is so far. There's no way he can actually lose this. He has so many expansions over his opponent. He has the better army composition. He has the infestor count, as you were talking about before. He has the defensive posture with these spine crawlers. This is exactly what Jookto needed, these spine crawlers over here. And it feels like Jookto just got outpowered this whole game. Like, there wasn't really some critical decision making that Jookto or Coca did. It just Coca was the better macroer, in my opinion.
Yeah. At this point, you see that Coca just has such a strong anchored position. Doesn't even need the spine crawlers because he just has so many units and the ability to fungal non-stop. 21 Hydras to 7, and that's just a good representation of DPS. If you can land the fungals, roaches will never be able to touch your Hydras, especially if you have the ample supply. Look at that, Coca trapping the roaches from Jookto and disallowing him to leave whatsoever. And now Jookto kind of has to go back to the drawing board. He really doesn't have an ability. I mean, Coca keeps running these roaches, by the 3rd base and killing off workers and stalling even his 3 base economy. And it's as if Jookto has been 2 base against 4 for the longest time.
Oh, yeah.
The consolation is Jookto did manage to clean up the bottom right base, but still, that's a small, meager victory in the big picture.
And Coca is so confident he doesn't even tech to any hive stuff. I mean, he just gets his essential upgrades, basically, and that's it. He knows he can just overpower his opponent by leaning on him, doing this constant attacks, and knowing at the end of the day, he will just remax. And Coca can never be, you know, or excuse me, Jookto can never keep up. There's no chance.
Well, this fight is definitely good for Jookto, where he's able to clean up a huge batch of the units, and Coca's Hydras are very vulnerable. A big thing with Hydras off creep is they can't run, so Jookto is immediately able to pin him down and kill off a huge part of army. Coca's remaxing purely on roaches. Oh, just 1 Hydra. 33 roaches and 1 Hydra. Oh, he's getting more Hydras now.
Not bad.
Man, it'd feel so awkward. It's like, well, I don't think I was meant to come in this game if you're the only Hydra in the entire unit comps.
Still, I mean, Coca is remaxed faster than his opponent. You can see 172, he's not even remaxed. No. And as you said, beach ball day. That's what it is, man.
It is. I hope you got your swimming trunks, roaches, because you're in for an infested Terran beach ball party. Now, the thing is, Coca did manage to give up a lot of his supply, but he still has this center expansion. I mean, the spine crawlers are just going to be very hard for him to chew through. And Coca still has a couple of fungals, and he's going to catch a lot of these units as well. And Jookto loses a huge amount of his Hydralisk, and that was a significant part of his DPS. The only opening that Jookto had has now been closed. And Coca's able to chase him all the way back.
Yeah, a little bit sloppy by Coca, to be completely honest. Coca many, many times was just losing his infestors left and right, but now his counterattack, this is what I'm talking about. He is so inefficient. Like, look at this. Actually, it's not that bad. But before, it was like 1,000 resources ahead of his opponent, and he wasn't doing too well, but he can keep having these cost-inefficient trades just because he's had his expansions up a lot longer than his opponent.
I was wondering if Coca really wanted to even bait Jookto's army, saying like, well, you know, I'm going to give up part of my army because I want him to counterattack and crush his initial force because he can't remake his units and try to take the advantage. Because look at that. Now we're in the stage where Jookto has to remake units, but he's completely starved in both departments, both in minerals and in gas. And Coca can just keep pumping out units really easily. So I think this, in the end, will work out. And we're talking about the Mass Roach Remax. How about the Mass Hydra Remax?
What the heck? What the heck?
This is so weird.
Yeah.
This is like going Primary Colossus and having just a few Stalkers and Sentries. It's just all raw DPS. As long as you can keep the Roaches at bay. Coca getting a little bit disorganized.
Oh, Coca has like the best fungals in the world right now, and he doesn't use any of them.
Yeah.
He is a little bit scared because it just takes a couple of fungals to actually kill off those Hydras. Hydras are very brittle. You need some sort of tanking unit behind that, whether it be Ultras, which are, I think, the most ideal, or there's something like Roaches. That's fine as well. You need something to tank that damage because they are so brittle. Roaches against Hydras. Yes, Hydras win outright with DPS, but you know, it's very easy to kill them, and then all that DPS is actually gone. So here we go. Jookto is going to try to put on the aggression right now. But again, he's going to be backed off. I don't know why he's not using this middle ground. This is actually a really nice place to enter as well, especially when you're ahead, just so you can have those constant attacks. Going up and down these cliffs, not necessarily the best thing to do. It gives your opponent a lot of time to react to the different sides. But here we have Jookto actually being the aggressor. This is a very bold move considering he hasn't been able to actually saturate his 4th base yet.
Okay, there's an Infestor hit squad load up into one of the Overlords from Coca, and it just nonchalantly passed by Jookto's army. He might think that's just an empty Overlord, but instead it's going to drop soon. But meanwhile, Coca's also focused on handling this army towards the southern half of the map. So Coca has this harassment option, but at the same time, 4 Infestors represent a lot of energy. And weird things can happen if you have an Infestor advantage that's significant, even 3 or 4 Infestors. Fungals can change the complete outcome of the game, and things can snowball way out of control. A huge fungal from Coca, and he also managed to lock down the Roaches from the northern half as well, making sure that Jookto can't get any closer to his Hydralisk. But now we have a mass infested Terran party, and in the end, I can't even see what's happening. Andre, GG gets called out from Jookto. Man. Oh, that was kind of disgusting, man. Just how much DPS in the entire army from Coca. Just way too much from Jookto. And he knew that attack, if it didn't work, that's it. He can't really hold off anything else.
Yeah, you might think, oh, well, Jookto still had a chance. Yeah. No, 21 Infestors to 13. It's not going to do the job. Not only that, I mean, you have mainly Hydra army, and what you're using is the Infested Terran to actually tank you the damage rather than using something like Roaches.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. You have this big, it's kind of immobile though, but you have this big, very powerful DPS army that can do so much. And what does Coca have, or excuse me, what does Jookto have as an advantage? Tanking ability, maybe?
Well, he actually had the Infestor advantage for that battle because Coca loaded up a couple of them. So
no,
that
they
was
were
the
21 to
thing.
13.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was 21 to 13. I checked right before. They might have just popped out, so they might have been
it could have been
all
popped
around
because he was making, I think, a few Festers.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You might be right.
In the end, we do see that Jookto loses game 1, but he can choose the map for game number 2. We'll find out what happens after a quick commercial break. We're just getting started, so don't go too far.